Oh, guys, good, you hear? I am so excited. Guess what? I hope this isn't about your podcast again. Why, did you finally listen to it?
Da-da-da-da. 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 The Groomer Next Door production. You're listening to BYOTP Radio. Coming up next, the Groomer Next Door. The Groomer Next Door podcast.
Dun, 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 dun.
Hello, Pups and Kittens, and welcome to an all-sick edition of the Groomer Next Door. Well, at least a couple of us. I am your co-host, Chris Green. Sitting next to me, as always, is the fabulous Sarah.
Hello.
And just getting over her cold, Claire.
Hello.
As I mentioned, we're a little sick right now, so it's going to be a little raspy, so bear with
Here
it.
it's coughing, and it's kind of unavoidable.
It is a little unavoidable, so we're going to try to make this as painless as possible. Coming up in a few minutes is Aaron Reese. He works for the Better Business Bureau, and he's going to discuss all the things that you need to know about buying a puppy or even a kitten from breeders and breeder fraud. And we have a story how this whole thing took place. But before then, let's go into our fact of the week. You haven't even heard this one. I'm telling Sarah that. In Croatia, scientists discovered that lampposts were falling down because a chemical in the urine of male dogs was rotting the metal. That's kind of weird. I thought that was really strange. I was like, well, that's kind of funny. So, yeah. All right. Well, with that said, let's dive into
The weekly roundup.
what? The weekly roundup.
The weekly roundup. Yeah.
Well, let's start off on our weekly roundup. Go back to last Saturday with the spaghetti dinner. How did that go?
It went amazing. We had a fantastic turnout. We raised about the same as we did the year before, which was $423 to our spay and neuter fund, which is awesome. We had cute little table toppers that talked about our fosters and our happy tales that we have. Awesome centerpieces, great food, an abundance of people coming in. It was just a really cool atmosphere. Nobody knew a stranger. Everybody wanted to chit chat, and it was all for an amazing cause. We're able to replenish the account a little bit, so we can help out easily probably 8 people with that $400 and some dollars, because ours is typically a certain amount of dollars into the spay and neuter, which is actually quite a bit. I'm just happy. I'm so happy.
I'm always really happy, and I really have to say it again. I don't even know if I said it last week. I can't remember that far back. I want to thank Kroger again. They were really cool about donating a bunch of food to the actual cause. Went in there and talked to their manager right here in Rolla. He was so cool about it. Donated a bunch of food for the actual event, which helped out immensely.
It did, and Price Chopper gave a $25 gift card to us, and excuse me, we were able to buy the more expensive items. And then we had a lot of people donate paper towels and plates and spaghetti from a fundraiser that Tara did at her work. So what was amazing is that last year we ended up spending about $100 on supplies and food. This year we only spent $28.
Which is amazing.
So everything else was pure donations, and all that money goes to helping all those people.
Very true. And let's go into Pretty Pity. Is pretty much what we're calling Stormy. Pretty Pity is the American Pit Bull that we rescued. And I actually will use the word rescue. That was more of a rescue than a surrender.
Yeah, that was a rescue. the dog has been drinking E. coli contaminated water.
I mentioned it last week.
And her diarrhea had consisted of just water for the past, I don't know, first few days that we've had her. It even took the medicine like 2 or 3 days to kick in.
It did.
And normally that stuff kicks in right away with one dose.
Right.
This took a couple days.
And it was really rough because, you know...
She thinned out.
Yeah.
You saw ribs. I mean, they had 4 of them. They would not have been able to afford all 4 of those dogs for medicine.
Right.
Because the medicine was $18 a bottle.
No.
Yeah. It was $18.30 a bottle.
I spent like $33.50 altogether. Did I get something else?
Yeah, you got a dewormer.
Oh, that's right. You're right. Sorry.
So,
which still would have had it been done anyway.
Right. So $30 per dog.
$100, 99. Well, $100
would never been able to afford.
Right. Right. But she's turned into an amazing dog. Oh my gosh.
She's a fantastic dog. She is never very far away from Claire.
Or me.
Yes. Now that she sees that men aren't something to be scared of.
Right.
She doesn't mind them.
Right.
And she absolutely adores Claire.
Yes.
She loves Katana.
Yes.
She's not too fond of Bel Grande or Chihuahua. And Roxy, it might take a little bit of time.
Right.
But I'm fairly certain.
And she loves playing with the cats. Loves to play with the cats.
I still stop her because I don't know what's going to happen. We're still in that what are you going to do phase.
Right.
But I'm fairly confident if somebody is willing to put in a few weeks of effort that she can adjust into any home. Environment.
Right.
Yes. And then the more she gets walked and the more she sees other dogs on other leashes, the better she'll become.
She's taken to work with us each day, and we take her for pretty good walks in between the day. So she's learning. She's actually starting to learn to be housebroken. She'll have an accident here or there, but no longer do we. And last night was
for a dog that's been outside all its life.
Right, and never been on a leash before. She does really well. I'm trying to off-leash train her as well at the same time, which might be a little bit much, but she's smart, so she's doing really well.
And she really wants to go inside the house. She doesn't want to stay outside again.
Well,
she just does not want to be outside anymore.
And that's the whole thing, though. That's the beginning of off-leash training.
Yeah, she's realized what it's like to be inside, and that's where she wants to be. And then now she actually jumps into the back of the truck. And what I've been doing is when I put the hatch down, she freaks out and she cowers. Well, what I do is I kind of look at her the entire way that the hatch is closing.
Right.
And I keep telling her it's a good girl, and then when it gets down, I just push it shut, so it doesn't, get shut.
Right. She doesn't hear that loud clank. Right.
She gets car sick. She pukes every time, which is awful. But it's what happens. So hopefully she'll be able to get over that very soon. I don't know. Maybe, but it might be one of those things where she's just going to be always car sick.
Yeah, and I looked at a couple remedies, and I didn't see how any of them were going to work.
No, I even tried putting her in the front seat.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, they say don't turn the air conditioner on, have the window down, and that'll help.
It
doesn't work. It's just something that she's just going to have to either outgrow or not outgrow at all.
Yeah. So we try not to feed her when we're going anywhere. And
last night was her first night not to be in the actual rescue room.
We put those kittens back.
We put them back there, and they've missed it. They missed it a lot. So they're back in their room, and she did great.
There was no potty accidents. Nope. There was no chasing of our other cats because one thing that our adult cats have learned is that they do not take any kind of crap from any one of our fosters. And
Bagheera's the hard one right now.
Bagheera's got a bad leg, and he's kind of...
She. Is it he?
He.
It's a he?
Oh, it's a boy.
I'm so lost right now.
Name.
We have so many girls and then a couple boys, and
but Mama
Oliver
Kitty,
threw me off. Yeah.
Mama Kitty, Callie, and Rambo, they know to put those fosters in their place.
Yes.
So the Pity doesn't do that. It doesn't mess with them.
Right.
And we're calling her Pity because she never came to her name Stormy.
She didn't like Stormy.
I was like, Pinky, that'd be funny, because at first she was Pinky and no brain. Because she was kind of dirt.
It was awesome, though. I still love her. I like her attitude. Her attitude's a lot like Katana now, opposed to Katana when we first got her.
She's being smart now.
Yes.
I just looked at her and I'm like, pretty pity, pretty pity, pretty
And that tail goes 100 miles per hour.
Yeah, she wiggles, and she wiggles when I said it, and she did it to the beat, pretty pity, pretty pity. So now she knows when I say pity means stop.
Right.
And she comes to us.
Right.
And pretty pity means that everything's okay.
Right. Yeah, she's doing really well. What an adjustment. I mean, 2 weeks as of the day that this podcast releases, we've had her, and she's grown leaps and bounds since the actual rescue. Her health is there. We got to pick up her weight, but that's not going to be hard. And Bagheera is still...
He's able to go to surgery now. His system's back to normal. We can take him to the vet again, have him checked out, and schedule for his leg removal. That thing's got to come off. The wrist joint and his paw are absolutely useless.
Yeah, it's not coming back.
No, and he's flying through the house like a bat out of hell.
Right.
That thing needs to come off so he's not knocking stuff down.
Well, it's getting in the way.
Yeah, it's starting to cause a problem with him trying to learn how to not use it. And I don't want to get him used to using the nub.
Right.
So let that get removed and call it good. And it's been several months since the accident, so it's not going to get any better.
Well, we don't have any pet food recalls, thankfully, this week.
Oh, thank goodness. That's been horrible lately.
It has. So, we're going to actually just find out that Aaron Reese is stepping into the actual podcast studio. So, let's go to that interview.
Oh, hello. Hold on a sec. Dad, we have a guest on the podcast.
All right, this week we are so fortunate to be joined by Aaron Reese. You work for the Better Business Bureau out in Kansas City, Missouri. So thank you very much for making some time to discuss the pet-related world and the Better Business Bureau. So thank you for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
And you're not, shy to the podcast. You understand that. So I thought that was great. I thought I would throw that in there right now. This is, going to be fun.
I had a podcast at one point in my past and loved it every week that I did it.
Yeah. Oh, it's fun. I'm not going to say it's not. All right. Well, let's go right into it. I'm not going to, dance around, sugar around, whatever I was going with that. Sugarcoat it was the word I was going with. Let's go with the beginning part, and that is, does the Better Business Bureau face a lot of pet-related complaints?
Yeah, it's pretty common. I mean, Better Business Bureaus all over the country are getting it. Missouri is obviously a more unique spot. Yes. It's not as bad as it was, and I don't want to be gloomy about that because whenever I first started at the Better Business Bureau, way back when, I mean, not to sound melodramatic, but Missouri was basically a post-apocalyptic nightmare landscape of puppy mills.
Yes.
And now there have been more regulations that have come forward to lessen the amount of complaints that we get. There are fewer sick animals than there used to be. But still, it is something we do see a lot here. And really, we're not alone. So, I mean, even across the country, we have, if you just search BBB and puppy mill, mm-hmm. you will see just article after article of stuff we've written about it. So, I mean, it's still something we're facing.
And, it's funny. It was about 2010 is really when you would start to hear it. I mean, I came here in 2010, so I really got my finger on the pulse, was really surprised. And that was still when you would see, you'd go into a mall and it would still have pet stores in there where, you're walking by and here's these little cute puppies in the window. Mm-hmm. And then that started to thankfully change because the awareness of puppy mills. And yeah, it is doom and gloom, but there has been some progress. I'll give you that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, actually at that time when you're talking about right around 2010 was, I mean, as much as I'd like to have the Kansas City Better Business Bureau take credit for it, the St. Louis Better Business Bureau did a study at the time and published it, and that was a huge push to get regulation through because the state legislature wasn't doing it. They had so much infighting going on that it ended up on the ballot as a proposition, and the people passed one that was extremely strict, and it ended up having to be tweaked because it was so strict. It was sending people to jail on first offenses and stuff like that. It was pretty pretty intense. But that's what got it going. That's what got the conversation going, was that study, and the only reason we have any regulation now.
Yeah, and you had Tony LaRussa at the time. A couple weeks ago, we had the Missouri Alliance was on the podcast, and we were discussing the same thing. And they were a part of that as well. And it's really interesting to see how many people were involved. And another reason why it's great to be able to talk to you is you're right there in the forefront of all this. You saw it all take place. It was I would say a change of the conversation, and it really has had a ripple effect. Even 7 years later, it's still really working to some degree.
Yeah, and there's always room for improvement for all sorts of things, but having a different opinion about how things work in the public, and really it was more just illuminating it. I mean, just showing like, okay, here's what the Better Business Bureau is facing. We're getting complaints on this every single day, all the time. Or maybe every other day or something like that, but we're reading about some pretty horrific things. And it's really tough to describe, only because at the Better Business Bureau, we're handling complaints on products, items, sales, customer service, things like that. And all those things apply, but you're also talking about a living animal. And it is a completely different thing to read about that, which I think is one of the reasons we really wanted the government to get more involved than they were. And really the only way that any of us could figure out how to do it was to just tell the public how bad it was in Missouri.
And it was well vocalized. That was the best part. Whether it was coming from St. Louis or going up to Kansas City, or even throughout the small little areas, it was heard. And I think that's the loudest I've heard anyone speak about anything, pretty much in my life, when it comes to, safety. I mean, I can only revert back to when I was a kid. You started to hear about child abuse. The 80s, that was when that was starting to become a big subject, where people were like, you know what, that's child abuse, that's child abuse. And it was given a label. And this was the first time I had seen or even heard anything that kind of fell in the same line. So it was nice. And it's nice to still hear it. It wasn't just like, okay, well, we've done that and we've moved on a couple years later. No, it's still being handled and dealt with, which I really have to say is amazing. So what's the biggest... Oh, go ahead.
Oh, no, I mean, it was just good that got out there, because, I mean, it was just... Of all the complaints we handle, puppy mills are probably the hardest.
Yeah, I bet.
I mean, we're reading... And a lot of these people think of these pets as family members. It's pretty common. I mean, I think of my two dogs as family members, even when they get in the trash and I yell at them. And it's just hard whenever people are dumping all of their money into trying to save a dog and they can't, or we're dealing with people who just absolutely can't afford to save their dog and they know that it's going to die. I mean, so we're reading this as a product complaint, and that was why it was so hard for us.
I would imagine that would be difficult. That would be the difficult part of it, which leads into the question: what's the biggest pet issue that is presented to the Business Bureau right now?
Oh, let's see, the biggest. Puppy mills are still an issue in Missouri. I'm not sure if they're the biggest anymore. Scams might be the biggest. I mean, we can talk about both. I mean, they're kind of neck and neck.
Yeah, because with pet issues, I mean, that's the whole thing. It's like, is it the scamming? Because that's going to be, one of our points that we'll hit in a little bit about breeders. Because it seems like that's got to be one of the hardest things, is really, in a sense, pinning it down. That's got to be a challenge. So, and again, puppy mill and breeder, I mean, here you kind of go hand in hand at the same time. So,
yeah.
Are puppy mills reported? So we've kind of covered this. Puppy mills are reported to you guys, correct?
Yeah, they are. You have to be somewhat callous to it to even handle the complaint. But yeah, I mean, they're still, whenever people talk about their sick animals, with birth defects and things like that, I mean, technically that's a sales problem, and we have to address the business. In this case, it would be a breeder. And you have to determine whether, okay, is this just bad luck? Because, you're still going to see something like 6% of just normal dogs are going to have problems anyway. Or is there an underlying issue with that breeder? Is that breeder doing things wrong? Do we need to contact the authorities in case it's bad enough? Is it something that, the breeder is heartbroken over too, because we run across that as well. They're doing everything they can to try to make it right. And yeah, so we're still seeing all that stuff. We're still handling all that stuff, and people can still definitely file complaints, and we encourage people to do it with us. But yeah, they're hard complaints to figure out. They're among the hardest. Yeah,
I would imagine. So now, what about unlicensed breeders? How do you handle that?
With those, well, first of all, whenever we get the complaint, sometimes we're not even going to know that. We're going to know the name of the breeder because the consumer provides it. For one, almost all of our information comes from consumers. Mm-hmm. We rely on consumers a lot. And whenever they say, hey, this company, this is their name, they're selling dogs, and sometimes some people will go there and look at it and say, these are terrible conditions. We'll find out about that. We can turn that over to the authorities. Other times it's, they sold me a dog that got very, very sick. We barely saved its life. Luckily we did, but we want to warn other people about it. And then we kind of look into that and figure out if we need to handle a complaint, whether we need to, move in another direction, whether we need to bring in the authorities on those, whether we need to contact the company and say, look, you're getting too many of these reports. What's going on with you? It kind of depends. And I would handle some of the investigation stuff personally because that's part of my job. And then if it's not that, it would go to a complaint analyst who would handle it just like a normal complaint. And that's about it. Yeah, it always depends, but that's the general process.
And again, one of the things that makes this whole episode interesting is just learning this process because, again, I'm doing this podcast weekly and I'm hearing things from people. And this actual story came from somebody that we know who was ripped off. And of course, just, life kind of imitates art, if you want to say. And it was like, well, this is a perfect episode to talk about. And you were the perfect person for this because you see it. You see this stuff probably on a daily basis of this breeder. You'll hear something today and, just in theory, but you see this person today, and then maybe in a week or two, or even tomorrow, might hear another complaint, and then it becomes uh-oh. And that becomes, we got ourselves a problem.
Yeah, and there are ways you can check the reputation of a breeder. It turns out it's, it's not too hard to do whenever you find people that know that particular breeder, know if they're good, know if they're bad. And people, like I said, consumers, very important, people are generally willing to share their experiences with a breeder or even their friends. They're like, I don't know if this person is really doing what they should be doing. They'll turn in people and we can contact other people and so forth. And, yeah, that's about it, yeah.
Well, what's great about it is we live in a new age. I always think this way. I always wonder, how did our parents handle this? We go out with our child. They can go to a McDonald's play area or go to the park, and we can put our face in a phone and be reading something and be able to look at our child at the same time. But we have that entertainment, or we can listen to something, we can listen to a podcast or a radio. We can always listen to something while we're waiting. Back when our parents were, raising us, they didn't have that. And the same thing applies with this, where they can easily look on their phone, Google, and you can find everything out. Where opposed to even 10 years ago, it wasn't as easy to look things up, which is hard to believe.
Right.
But now it's just right there in front of you. It's like, how did we get away with it?
Yeah, we have the entire catalog of human knowledge at our fingertips in our pocket. Mm-hmm. It's amazing. I do know that, because the Better Business Bureau has been around for 101 years now. Mm-hmm. And we actually have some records dating back to what we used to do to educate people, because we still do the same thing, it's just faster. Because, online you can go to our website and you'll see notes about the latest scams. You'll see reports on companies and so forth. 50 years ago, exact same thing. We would send out newsletters that were physical, and you could flip through them to look at the most recent articles that we had. And then you'd call us to get reviews on companies. Mm-hmm. So we would say, in the past year, we'd go through a Rolodex, back when they had them, and say, this company had 5 complaints. This breeder had, 5 complaints, and they were about this. And we don't think that they're a good company. It's still kind of the same thing, except for it's,
quicker.
You can do all that in 10 seconds.
Right. It's like I remember growing up hearing about the Encyclopedia Britannica, I think is what the exact word was, and that was like the thing to have. And now it's like my phone is that and so much more. It's just comical. Now it brings the question: is there a common threat? For example, like social media, the newspapers that fraudulent breeders tend to lurk. Where are they lurking that you're finding to be the most local place?
I wouldn't say that there's a particular spot, but they have shown up in the backs of newspapers, especially the ones you can get on racks, like the 13 nickel that you find out in front of grocery stores, sometimes free ones. They'll also show up on Craigslist, which is extremely hard to trace sometimes. Especially if all you have is this, temporary email address that sends it to a different email address. There's almost no way for us to track them down. So scammers use that a lot. So, our main defense against that is to educate people so they don't get caught in it. It doesn't always work, but we try to pump out as much information as we can to warn people about that type of thing. And really, websites are so disposable now. They can crank out websites one a week if they want, and we'll run across websites that look great. They look fancy and updated and new, shiny, and people sometimes get suckered in by that. I have. I mean, you look at those and go, "This is a good-looking website. It looks professional. Everything's right." But really, all it is a template they bought from some programmer.
Wow.
And they just start one over and over again. They switch out the pictures from legitimate sites, and those are probably the most we see, but it's because we can see them from anywhere in the world.
Yeah.
So if there's a scam going on in Maryland, I can see that online. If in a newspaper, there's going to be 1 or 2 that you might find, but you look online, you just dog breeder, Google it, and you'll see 100,000 results, maybe 200,000 results. In the United States, stuff like that. Yeah, so that's where we see most of everything, but it's not really local.
Wow. You know what? I never thought about just these pop-up websites that just come out of nowhere, almost kind of like a little pop-up shop that there for a couple days. Oh wow, that one shocked me. And I don't really get shocked that often. I mean, let's be realistic. Wix and Squarespace, these guys have great templates. And they're not, unfortunately, they're not sponsors, so I'm not really plugging them. But they've got great stuff, and you can make professional websites. And one thing that I can say from our perspective is we'll see different groomers. They'll show up out of nowhere, they'll show up on Facebook, and they'll take photos of other people's work, put it on their page. Some of them are even grooms that are done for show. Special designs that you're like, there's no groomer that's going to do that for a dog. And they'll take those photos, they'll put them up on theirs, and you're just going, oh my gosh. And then people go to those places. I know you probably hear about this a lot, that their dog was not treated right, or the groom was incorrect, and they were unsuspected because their website looks great or the Facebook page looks great. It's shocking. But I never thought about that.
It absolutely looks great because they're using someone else's work. That is great.
Yeah.
And that happens in every single industry we deal with. It's not just, in your case, grooming. It's not just puppy breeders, because they will do the exact same thing. They'll take pictures of dogs from legitimate websites and just put them on theirs. Happens everywhere. Happens all the time. Happens with roofers. Happens with flooring companies, et cetera, et cetera.
Oh yeah. Well, they can't all be the top of the top, and that's the first thing. Wow. So, how many reports, and just approximately, does the Better Business Bureau receive per year regarding a breeders and breeder fraud?
Oh gosh,
they weren't going to be easy. I'm not going to give you the easy ones.
No, it's fine. I honestly don't know locally. I know that New York did a study on it, and they had 2,000 over the 3-year reporting period that they normally do. And it's not just New York. I think that they went nationwide. So probably, I don't know, 700. Maybe it wasn't nationwide. New York's pretty big. That's the only statistic I've seen recently. We handle them, maybe every week now. Used to be every day. Now it's probably every week.
At least it's not every day.
So maybe 50 here, and then maybe about the same in St. Louis, a little less in Southern Missouri. There are 3 Better Business Bureaus in Missouri. And, between all of us, maybe 150 a year, but that's a guess, but probably somewhere in there.
But it's still not as bad as you would think. I mean, I'm thinking when you're saying 150, I'm going, a week? Oh my gosh, but okay, a year. That's okay.
No, in a year, yeah. No, most of the time, we will we don't take complaints on everything. I mean, there are certain things that, might not fall into our purview, but we'll hear about it. We can hear about, veterinarians giving dogs wrong shots or them signing up for the wrong thing. And there are different things, but we'll still hear about that stuff. And scams, another thing, because there's no real company to file a complaint against. They don't exist. It's just a scam that had you wire money off to, Germany or something, Russia. And there's no one to put that complaint against. It's just a scam. So we will have those reports on Scam Tracker you can run across, and you'll see them. Dog breeder scams, puppy scams, pet scams, things like that. A lot of those start on Craigslist. But straight up complaints, things we handle, things we contact the breeder, ask them to resolve the issue, talk to the consumer, go through the process. That's probably 1 a week here.
That's not terrible. I'm not gonna say that's terrible, but it does seem like Craigslist. Honestly, in some sense, I always wonder how is it Craigslist is still around. I mean, it is almost the most dangerous social media page you could use, and I know it had a good idea in the theory. People, of course, ruined it, but it's still surprising that Craigslist is still around. Shocks
yeah, honestly, Craigslist is filling a void that would have to be filled no matter what, and I think that's why it's still around. So as long as they don't fold up shop, no one else can do it, and they just keep cranking along. We warn people about it. Even Craigslist warns people about it as much as they can, and it's just not something that can go away. There's always going to be a need for classified, and there's a demand for immediacy. So that's the only thing that does both. So it's probably not going anywhere.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, I don't remember ever growing up hearing that the classified ads in the newspaper were causing issues like Craigslist does. It's a weird medium of just, I don't even know what to call it. Did they?
Oh yeah. We have like I said, because we have a bunch of records from scams we used to have to deal with all the time, and all the same stuff.
Man.
It was just in the classified ad in the newspaper.
Boy, it's funny because obviously you see this stuff all the time, so you know it. But I guess I might have been sheltered from it. Maybe the news content was not what it is today, so we don't see these things. We didn't.
It's partly that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not that you were sheltered. It's really just not. I mean, the news. I mean, now we're in an era of 24-hour news.
Yeah.
Even with local stuff, they'll put up stuff every couple hours.
Yeah, and you got
back then, you'd have to wait till tomorrow, and they'd have to find place in their newspaper, actual print. Like, where can we put this story? And some of the stuff just didn't show up.
Yeah, boy, maybe that ignorance was bliss. Yeah,
yeah. That's another thing. It's not as bad as it is. You think. I mean, based off of all the news stories, you see all this horrible stuff going on. But for the most part, most people are good. Most people want to do the right thing. I mean, we deal with. In Kansas City, we have 17,000 complaints a year, but we also have nearly 70,000 businesses in our service area, and most of them are fine. They don't get complaints. They don't have problems. Even if they do get a complaint, they resolve it. We have like a 90% resolution rate.
Which is good. That is pretty good. I mean,
yeah.
I will say, and for those who are in the St. Louis area, I'm just saying it from what I see, and Kansas City is a different type of metropolitan. I mean, St. Louis is kind of small, a lot smaller, I feel, than Kansas City. Kansas City feels bigger, and it just has a unique feel to it. Something that you don't really find in other cities. I don't even know where to start. I mean, you're there, you have probably a better understanding of it. Like I said, the only thing I can really refer to is really strange weather, and and that was my take. But I found it very unique, and it seems like it works well. Seems like it works really well, actually, for metropolitan.
Yeah. In the metropolitan area specifically, I I now live in South Kansas City, but I used to live downtown. And I can tell you that there's probably a stronger sense of community than I've ever had anywhere else. I always wondered why, because everyone was friendly, and it was kind of surprising because you live anywhere else, you can keep to yourself.
Yeah.
But I think part of it was you're just stacked on top of each other, so you try to get along with everybody, and it's also small enough to where it's not like New York where you have 1,000 people walking by you at any given time, and there's no way to get to know anybody. There's no way to talk to anybody. There's no reason to be nice to anyone, honestly. But in Kansas City, you're on top of each other, but you still have a little bit of space.
Right. Yeah. I grew up in Los Angeles, so I kind of have that New York feeling. I understand you'll never see anybody at the same time. Like you can go to the market in Los Angeles and you'll probably never see anybody you know. You go to the market here, you guarantee you're going to see somebody you know. It feels like that in Kansas City as well. I feel like you guys pretty much can run into each other a lot easier. And yeah, it's a big city. So that's kind of cool. That is kind of cool. So what kind of actions can the Better Business Bureau take against breeder fraud?
Fraud, like whenever they try to get somebody to wire money and they don't send an animal. Yes,
let's just say subject A buys a whatever. Let's say a Yorkie, and the breeder says, okay, we'll send the money to us, and you can pick up the dog this day. And then it turns out that they're no longer there, or they were never there, and they're now out this money. What kind of actions can an actual person take, and what can you guys do at the Better Business Bureau?
Yeah, well, the first thing is, as soon as someone asks you to wire money, just drop the deal. Don't ever talk to that person again. That's going to be a scam basically every time. I can't think of an exception. I've ever read. So more or less 100% of the time, they ask you to wire money via Western Union, MoneyGram, something like that. Green Dot is a popular one. Just don't hang up the phone, never talk to the person again, go somewhere else. Mm-hmm. And even before you get to that step, you may want to consider local breeders that you can go to their facilities and see if they're reputable. Where you are, actually, in Raleigh, near you is where most of the accredited breeders in the state are. Because we don't have any up here. St. Louis only has a few. The Better Business Bureau in Springfield, that's where most of the accredited breeders are. So, consider doing it local, going to their place, talking to them face-to-face is great if they're willing to have you come out. Get references, things like that. So, there's stuff you can do before you get to the steps where they send you money, or where you send them money. And now if you actually do send them money, things change. That's really, really hard to get your money back. I'm not going to say impossible because I've seen it come back, usually years later.
Yeah.
But for the most part, when that happens, just don't send them anything else, because a lot of these scams will contact you again, and then, there's another fee. There is a transportation fee that I forgot to tell you about that, or there's more shots, or there's things that we have, they'll just keep milking you for money day after day, week after week, until you stop giving them money. So at any point that they come back to you and say, one more thing, just, that it's a scam, sorry you lost your money, that's probably what happened. Contact us. We want to hear about this. every time it happens. And I mean, every single time somebody gets scammed, our info comes from consumers, comes from people who did get taken advantage of. I would like to stress, not to be embarrassed by it because it happens to everybody. But I know that's not always possible. But I would encourage people to use our Scam Tracker app, which is online, and, fill that out, send it in. A local police report wouldn't hurt, although sometimes, if you're in a more rural area, they don't take that type of thing. So, maybe contact the Attorney General's office as well. Do that.
Very good. I always hear about it, not for, I'm 35, so you're not going to really hear about it from somebody in my age bracket. You're going to find it in elderly, not even elderly, pretty much out of the technological era. The ones that are, they were past that once it became a thing, that are still believing more in the almost the old format. Obviously we all know phones can be, very tricky, and if you weren't raised in it and you didn't grow up in it, it's going to be a lot more tricky. They seem to be the victims to this, and that's where this whole thing kind of came up. It's like, I can use a phone, but these smartphones, I'm lost. I can navigate through Facebook, but even at that, it can be tricky. So that's where this whole, thought process is. It's like, obviously somebody who is my age could still get scammed. They believe everything that's going to happen, but it can happen to any of us. But, when I said it, I was like, you're probably thinking to yourself, no, that's you send money, you're pretty much, you're asking for it. It's like, yeah, no, I get it. It was just the thought process of, someone who is past all of this. And just, again, technology flies.
It's kind of funny, though, because we do studies on this type of thing all the time. Who are the victims? Who are people targeting? How are they being targeted, et cetera? And we do it every few years. We do it frequently, really. Just as long as soon as we get done with one study, we're like, okay, we need to start another one. And more or less, with your specific example with smartphones and technology, and then not being able to deal with it, basically just being just confused enough to make one wrong decision to lose just enough money. Like it's you're always on the razor's edge. But that actually applies to young people just as much, because they're not used to the old forms. So like when someone knocks on your door and you answer, younger people are, they tend to be used to dealing with people online. They can negotiate that. But whenever someone is lying right to your face, it is so difficult to understand what's happening that you can be taken advantage of just as easily as somebody who's not familiar with smartphone.
Right.
And there's always a way that a con man is going to try to take advantage of whoever they're dealing with, no matter who it is, no matter how old they are. And really the thing that we came across was young people are scammed a little bit more often, as it turns out, but they're just not as available. So you have retirees, work-at-home parents, things like that. Anyone who's home, anyone who is available to be scammed, that's who gets scammed. It doesn't really have much to do with anything else.
And yeah, I guess when you think about the youth, it's almost kind of like catch me on social media, Facebook, Twitter, whatever. And it really is kind of the conversation if you really think about it.
And of course the people that they're talking with are their friends. I mean, they hear about stuff on social media, and then they go meet face-to-face with their friends. So you meet face-to-face with somebody who's not. How do you deal with that person? What do you say? So forth and so on. It's not as clear-cut whenever you're not dealing with one of your friends, someone you know close. And con men can take advantage of that. They can take advantage of anything. So let's start there. Yeah. But it can be anybody. It really just can be. And that's why we need to be as vigilant as we can and get as much information out to people as we can.
Man, and again, you're the perfect person to talk to over this, because you really are burning up the different outlets that you really don't think about. So it's kind of interesting. Have you, and this really is something that I'm wondering, because we've kind of gone over this, but have you noticed a decline, or has there been an increase from breeders committing fraud that you've been noticing?
It's a definite decline.
Definitely decline. That's a good thing.
Yeah, that's sharp. Since 2000, 2011, probably.
Yeah, I think the law came into play in 2011. I think it started being campaigned in 2010. And I think that the law was passed, and then it was rewritten. I want to say a year later. If I'm
I think you're right.
Things down, it's really hard to pinpoint everything, because you know how it is. Laws are put into place and then amended and adjusted. Yeah, I think it was 2012 it got fixed, but at least it's going down. So
and I think a lot of that's due to public exposure too. It's not just a law; it's people. It's complete backlash against what was going on before that people weren't really aware of.
It's weird. I'm noticing a little bit more outside. And this is just perspective. I mean, obviously it's not a fact. You probably have more fact. I'm noticing that a lot of the puppy mills and these things are more or less moving out of Missouri to surrounding states that are around it, just to kind of flush out. I don't know if that's a fact yet, but that's why I've been reading different things. It's like, okay, well, Arkansas has now kind of got more of it, almost kind of.
Yeah, I heard the same thing.
Okay, that's what I've seen, and I've read it. That's why I was like, I don't know if it's fact, but I've been seeing a lot of this, which is
well, I guess I can't testify to it, but what you're saying sounds right. I mean, that's how I feel about it too.
Yeah, well, it seemed like if they were in the St. Louis area, they moved out to Illinois. If they're closer to the Springfield area, they moved out to Arkansas, or even Oklahoma. It was a weird, almost a scatter, and that's what I've been noticing, which is weird. And then it becomes, and again, not on a fact. It's what I've read. It seems like it actually went from puppy mill to almost pet hoarding. They almost kind of went hand in hand, like maybe they just lost control and nobody was buying from it, and it became a pet hoarding situation, which is very strange. So, like, again, I don't know if it's fact, but that's why I've read a lot of different reports of this. So, now,
I'd have to trust you on that. You're tapped into it.
Oh, well, I read, but again, how much, you can read and read and read, but you have to realize that not every report is always going to be completely correct. Yeah. Just take everything with a grain of salt nowadays, because how many news outlets are out there? Now, we won't say names, of course, but do you receive a lot of complaints about dog food companies?
Dog food companies? I'm not sure, only because we don't have any of them here that I know of in our area, and because Better Business Bureaus are what some people consider turf-based. We basically have regions we cover. So wherever, what's the one in Colorado? Is that Pedigree?
Oh, I don't know.
But they would get every single complaint in the nation about Pedigree. So we would never even see it. And because we don't have any dog food companies here that I can think of, we just don't see them. Not here, anyway.
Well, at least we're not getting it. I know we have a Royal Canin right here. I don't know if you have one out there. And again, there's plants all over the place. I just don't know of all their locations.
Occasionally we'll see stuff. It usually has to do with advertising. The advertising problems. They're saying something that no, that's not true, or your dog. It makes your dog's life longer. And it's like, you can't say that. So we'd have to contact them about that. We have a national organization called NAD, National Advertising Division. That's part of the Better Business Bureau, and they look at national campaigns for things like Pedigree and Science Diet. Anyone who makes any type of a claim, they can look at that and say, that's going too far, you can't say that, and they will challenge the company and make them change it, or at least attempt to make them change it or convince them to.
Do you see a lot of those come through, or is that, again, something you haven't seen a lot?
I wouldn't say a lot, but enough. It happens with anyone who makes a claim, anything to do with health, and it can be dog health, it can be human health. We'll see lots of claims are just like, you cannot possibly back that up. Stop saying it.
That is one thing that, it could drum up a huge conversation. What drives me bananas about reading any bag of dog food that makes these claims, and they automatically have harmful chemical, ingredients that are on the bag. And I never understand, how can you put that on there? It's known fact that this particular ingredient is not good for the dog, but they still do it, and it drives me nuts.
Good, I understand. I like I said, I haven't seen any of them here, but I do read about the national ones. I'm like, Yeah, they're not supposed to say that. They shouldn't be saying that.
But I think, this is off topic in a sense, but it's like the people who regulate the actual ingredients. The board are actual companies that own these particular dog food companies. So they're regulating themselves. And it's ridiculous. We had the director of a movie, I don't know if you've heard of it, it's called Pet Fooled. We had the director on, and he was like, if you ever contact them, they're going to decline, but look at the board of directors, and you read it, and you go, that's every dog food company that's regulating themselves. How is this even possible? How is this legitimate? So it was interesting. And I was wondering, that ever come across you guys, but...
Yeah, not very often. I mean, I could talk about personal stuff, just because it's kind of weird. I ran across an interview with Burt Ward, who is the old Robin.
Yes.
Yeah. And he talked about a dog food that he developed specifically for large breed canines. And I mean, the interview was fascinating. He talked about, chemicals that went on it, fat that goes into it, things that are wrong with normal dog food, especially for large breeds. So he was like, okay, I want to make my own. And that's what he did, which I thought was really cool of him. But, that has nothing to do with the BBB. It's just, that was an interesting little thing that came up. And that was really the first time I think I heard of the things that these bigger companies did with their dog food and things like that, and what specifically they did wrong, and the things that they advertised incorrectly. And I think that was the first time. Yeah,
his dog food, and he lives in Southern California. I think it only is sold in a few places that I'm aware of. I've actually asked if he'll be on, but now he's doing a lot more things because of the whole revamp of that version, that era of Batman. So
he's doing that cartoon.
Yeah, I mean, and he's backing out. He's in Comic-Cons, so I have not been able to actually get time to interview him. He's too busy, and, well, But, he says 25, I want to say 25 years that his dogs can last, and he has studies that back this up with his own dogs. It is a unique story. Yeah, and that's...
I'm interested to see if it's true, because he did have one dog I know that lived for 20 years.
It was between 20 and 25 years, and it was still alive, if I'm not mistaken, even in the video, because there's the little kind of demo video that he shows, like a YouTube interview type thing. Yeah, it was a unique thing. I was like, I'm wondering if that actually could happen, but who knows? He may have figured something out. So what does the Better Business Bureau do to validate a claim?
To validate a complaint? Whenever someone files a complaint with us, the first thing we have to do is locate the company if the consumer didn't provide enough information to locate them. We have to make sure it's something we handle, so we don't handle things against certain groups that already have a regulatory agency overseeing them, like lawyers. We're not qualified to handle a complaint on a lawyer. Doctors, malpractice stuff, we're not going to handle that type of thing. We're also not going to handle things like buyer's remorse, you just change your mind, we can't handle that. There's a list of things, there's a few things we can't handle. As long as it passes those, and, there's a legitimate complaint saying, I sent this person money, he sent me a dog that, we fell in love with, but it's been sick from day one, and, we want the cost of, the medical bills covered by the breeder, which this is a complaint that I've actually handled, so this is exactly what happened. And you say, okay, that's a valid complaint. We send that off to the company, and we say, we need you to address this complaint. One of your consumers is upset with you for what you did, or at least, claims you did it, and we need you to respond. And as long as the person responds reasonably, sometimes they'll work it out amongst themselves. We're there to kind of oversee the complaint process. It's through us, but we want to make sure that the consumer and the company are both behaving in a way to try to get this resolved on their own. Usually it happens, like I said, something like 90% of people, the companies are being as reasonable as they can. And dog breeders are getting more reasonable as time goes on. Way back whenever we first did that study, they were kind of awful. But now, they will try to do what they can, and as long as that happens, it's a resolved complaint. if the company doesn't respond, that's an unanswered complaint or unresolved complaint. If they don't offer anything, another unresolved complaint, and that's when we start reporting things to the public, saying they have an unanswered, unresolved complaint on their file, lowers their rating, things like that.
It's just from a business standpoint, it's just easier to for one, obviously every company can have a customer unsatisfied, but the easiest thing is just respond. And I mean, it really, honestly, shouldn't get as far as going to you guys. I mean, let's be realistic.
We're almost a last resort for a lot of people. Not quite the last resort, because there's courts and regulatory agencies and things like that. But once it gets to us, the company does know that we're going to publish this. We're going to say, okay, here's what happened. Here's how the company responded. Do you really want to look bad in this case? I would imagine. And so they generally respond.
A lot of companies just don't care. I mean, there is that arrogance, which is sad. Even breeders, I would imagine. Yeah.
No, definitely. And we have to deal with them sometimes. But for the most part, most companies, they just want to take care of their own customer. Something went wrong, and they have to address it.
Which, it's the easiest way. Now, you've said it a couple times, and I've kind of alluded to not mention it because it was down a list of my questions. Now, you've mentioned something that's really interesting, and I wanted to actually get more information about it, and that is your scam tracker.
Oh, right, yeah. It's something we developed a couple of years ago because we didn't really have a place where consumers could just tell us about a scam. I mean, whenever we were handling complaints for the last 100 years, we'd get reports of scams nonstop. But we never had a place where consumers could use that information, where reporters could go to it, where regulatory agencies use it now too. So, I mean, we didn't have a place to display that. We finally developed one way too late, in my opinion, but we now have one now. And so people can go to it, and they can look at it and say, in my zip code, what is going on? Who's targeting what? Or you can search by keyword and say, dog breeder scam, or puppy mill, or usually puppy mill is a better term to search for the specific thing. And, it'll pull up every result in the United States, and you'll be able to see what other people are claiming that scams are doing, where it's getting hit the hardest, because these scams will use particular areas. They will get lead lists to a city and then, exhaust that one, then move on to the next one. So you see where things are going on recently. It's probably one of my favorite things we've ever done. I love it.
And better late than never. That's always
the
answer to everything. That's the way I looked at it. It's if it was never created, then we have something that's too late. Now, in the final couple questions, what steps could someone take to avoid being ripped off?
To avoid it, first of all, just be sure not to believe some of those fancy sites I was telling you about. Like I said, they may look great, but you can just buy one. I mean, they're really not that expensive anymore. They're going to make a lot more money out of it anyway, so they're willing to spend a chunk of change to get a nice-looking website and try to trick people. It's pretty effective, so don't fall for that. Don't just go off of appearances. Make sure you check who that breeder is, check the references, check with us, the Better Business Bureau. Even like in the Kansas City area, we don't have any accredited businesses that are dog breeders, but we do have dog breeders with no complaints. No one's ever said anything bad about them. You can check them out there. You can check them out with the Attorney General's office to make sure they don't have complaints with them. But you just want to make sure that you do your research before you do anything. And, one of the biggest things is whenever you see a pure breed dog for half the price of what a pure breed dog normally costs, probably it's best to ignore that. Those end up being scams, way too frequently. If it's too good to be true, usually is. And especially whenever you have to send your money elsewhere, the breeder's not in your area, all those things. Or if they're reluctant to give you any information like an address, phone number, anything like that. And, verify the information that they provide you. So, whatever they do give you, make sure that's actually accurate. And then those are most of the things that you can do to avoid those scams. If you're not sure, call us. We'll help.
Very good. And, you know, the reason why I ask these questions is I could say this every week on a podcast. But to have a professional who sees it every day saying it, it puts that stamp of approval on it and says, hey, I see this every day. This guy could say it until he's blue in the face, but I see it. So really, truly, this is how it is.
Yeah. I mean, I have sat there and I've handled complaints where I read about dogs dying, you know, these people's brand new pet that they got attached to, that their kids got attached to, that, you know, didn't end up well. And I've read, you know, I mean, I've also read where the breeders just, you know, distraught over it, and they were a good breeder, but, you know, some dogs get sick. And I've read all the painful stuff you can, and I've read it enough to know these are steps that people should be following, and they can avoid a lot of problems in the future, can avoid heartbreak and, you know, just general sadness, money loss, stress. It just, I've seen a lot of it, yeah.
Well, I bet. And that's why hearing it from you is a stronger message than just, you know, random me saying it to everybody, even though, yes, I see this stuff, but you see it from a professional standpoint, so it is very helpful. And lastly, how would one report a problem or fraud to the Better Business Bureau?
All right. We take everything in writing, so you can definitely give us a call, talk to us about it, whatnot, but if you're actually wanting to file a complaint, it has to be in writing of some form. Okay. So online, we have an online complaint system. You can go through, click file a complaint, walks you through it. You can email us. You can write us a letter. When we're talking about advancing technology, that's one of the things we just about don't see anymore. Letters are going away, but we still get them from time to time, and those are valid complaints. Make sure, if you do file a complaint with us, to include all the contact information you can for these breeders. Like I said, consumers are our primary source of information, so, you know, we may not have even heard about some person selling dogs out in the middle of nowhere in northern Missouri. We're just like, who? Yeah. If you write their name down, that's not necessarily a good enough way for us to get a hold of them. So definitely provide the name of the company, the address for the company, phone number for the company, and if they have a website, you know, anything else you can provide. In the complaint body itself, be sure to put what happened and what you'd like done about it. So we have internal names for it. You know, this is the complaint and this is the desired resolution, but really that's what it means. It means what happened, what do you want the company to do to resolve the issue. If it's just to notify us of something wrong going on, please do so, but it won't be a complaint. That would be something else. That would just be basically a report to us.
Well said. And this coming from a podcaster. You got to get back into it. You really do. You know what? Yeah, the bug's going to bite you now. I'm just saying, it's going to bite you.
Yeah, I always like doing it.
Well, you know, I really appreciate you taking the time, Aaron, to be on the podcast. It was informative, and I really appreciate it.
Of course. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you again, Aaron Reese, for being on the podcast. Now, let me explain how this interview came about. Well, actually, I'm going to have you explain it because you really know the story a little bit better.
I don't know much of it. I didn't want to get into detail because it was really hurtful at the time. But we have a customer who brings one of her dogs in to see us monthly. Well, she had her heart set on getting a little tiny Shih Tzu or Maltese of some sort. Something little and tiny that she can have with her and will sit with her on her lap. She searched high and low and found this one picture of this gorgeous puppy, and she instantly fell in love. Told the breeder, this is the one I want. Sent in her deposit, and most of the time what it is that you put a deposit down, and then when you pick the puppy up, that's when you pay the rest. Mm-hmm. So she put her deposit down and never heard from this person again. So she's not necessarily upset about losing the money, as she is losing the fact that she fell in love with this dog. You can fall in love with a picture, you really can. And she already came up with a name for the baby. She ordered bows from me so she can put bows in the hair. She was just absolutely excited that she finally was able to get this puppy. And that rug was just taken out from underneath her. It broke her heart.
She has never been able to get the money back. Never been
she wasn't able to get the money back.
Anywhere with it. Yeah.
Couldn't find the guy. Didn't know where he was, where the kennel was that he used to breed the animals at. She doesn't know. And
let's go back to what Aaron had said. Find out as much as you can about these breeders. Try, if you can't get out there to see the conditions, you may have a problem.
If they don't want you to go into an area because they said, well, that's restricted, then you call BS, you turn around and leave.
Right.
And you spread the word that they won't let you see where they keep the puppies. And
find the lineage, because that's the biggest thing. That is the biggest thing and all. And, ultimately, this may be a little preachy, but adopt, not shop.
Yes.
That's been...
Even...
that's the biggest thing.
I'm all for the purity of the breeds. I am. But there are so many that are put to death each day that we really need to focus on adopting the ones that are alive right now. And the recreational breeders,
right?
Those drive me bonkers because they keep producing and producing and producing whenever they feel bored.
Or money strapped, strapped
or they
with
want
dash.
some money.
Well, look at Pitty. I mean, going back earlier when we talked about Pretty Pitty, you look at her. She had 3 litters.
Yeah, she said 2 or 3 litters.
Yeah.
So she's only 2.
And there's no way that they didn't have those litters out of just,
Oops.
Whoops. Right. No, it was a cash grab. So.
Especially if they charge $25 a piece and there's 8 of them and they didn't worm them, they didn't give them shots. That was $25.
You got $200 right there in your pocket once you get the litter all sold.
Yeah.
So you think about that. That's what's going on. Mm-hmm. So, for all of you who are actually thinking, and it was great being able to talk to somebody who was in the Better Business Bureau right here, who sees it from the, unfortunate side of the Missouri side, where puppy mills have been, the massive times. Yes, they've filtered out since 2011, but...
And did you notice the Amish puppy mills? Those are just as bad.
Well, any puppy mill seems to be bad. Yeah.
Absolutely awful. And the Amish, they do the same thing as anybody else, and they can get away with it. It's awful.
Yeah.
It just needs to stop. And people need to go to the rescue and pick up a dog.
Right.
Pick up a cat. There is no need for mass breeding right now.
And if you've learned anything from this podcast, think of all of the pups and kittens that we've actually saved. I mean, yeah, horrible stories, coming out. And, we're never going to have a touchy-feely rescue story. But look at these lives that have been saved. I go to just Pity alone. Left outside in the cold, not taken care of, and turns out to be one of the best out there. Yep. And how many dogs and cats have we actually brought in that's been the case?
Yep.
So,
people don't ever understand that you can go to a shelter and pick up a purebred. They're not all months.
No, they're not.
There's sad situations where they had to surrender a purebred Shih Tzu. Good breeding, couldn't keep it, couldn't sell it, so they took it to a shelter. Look at Katana. Katana's papered.
Katana was a rescue, though. That was a severe rescue, or she would never have been alive.
Exactly. She was underweight. She was malnourished. She had fleas like nobody's business. And
worms, too.
And bad worms.
Yeah.
And we got her. We paid $250 for her. We got papers. She is AKC registered. She has lineage. You can trace her bloodline back several generations. And yet, here we did. We rescued her and gave her a good life.
And it was weird, though, because if you think about that could have been a very similar situation to what happened to our customer. It was we drove 10 hours to go and get this great pup, but could have been a lot of things that could have gone wrong with that. And we paid money, but we knew if we didn't go out there and save her, she was going to be put down, because the original owner was like, I'm putting her down.
Yep.
So, you know, that's something to always think about and to consider. I mean, that's not a shop. That's a rescue still. Even though you're paying that kind of money, it's still a rescue.
Well, a lot of rescue places, they charge that kind of price anyways.
Yeah. Well, that looks like that's, you know, everything in a nutshell. And by that sound, looks like Claire has turned on the applause sign. So, I'm Chris Green. Have a pet-tastic week.
And I'm Sarah Green. Make sure everybody realizes life is so short. Play with your pet.
Bye-bye. Oh, before I go, I was about to say this. I wanted to actually wish you happy anniversary.
Aww.
I forgot to say that earlier. Sarah and I, this past weekend, past Friday, we celebrated our 10th anniversary of being married. Happy anniversary. 10 years married. 14 years together, 10 years married. What an amazing year.
Can you imagine if we had a kid right when we met?
14 years old? Oh my gosh. That's crazy. It's hard enough to know we have an 8-year-old.
8.5.
8.5, you're right. Well, and with that, happy anniversary, I love you.
Happy anniversary to you, and I love you.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Okay, gotta go in my bedtime. Wait, you forgot about me. And now a moment with Claire.
Alright, we had just finished the very last game of basketball for the season, for Upward Season 2017, which we won't go back to that league until 2018.
Yeah.
So, tell me all about this game.
I'm gonna really actually miss that game, because it was really challenging. And we actually battled 2 times with Molly's team, actually. I don't know why they actually had to battle us 2 times.
That was a rough team. You had 3rd graders on that team, and it was overstacked with good talent and older kids. So I don't understand why they allowed that, but they did.
Yeah.
That was a hard one. That was a hard game. You guys did not come out of the game.
We're in 2nd grade. How did they put good grades on that team when we're in 2nd grade?
Well, they built that team a different way, and I don't know why they built it that way. It should never. Those kids should have been spread out into the other teams and not all in one team.
And the 3rd graders.
Well, there could be that, or they could just put like 1 3rd grader on each team. So, what did you learn this season while playing basketball for this team?
I learned that if we lose, it doesn't matter if we only have fun, and don't brag if you're a winner. You're not going to get a gold medal or a gold trophy if you win. You just win.
True. Very
have
true.
Fun.
Did you learn anything from the games that you lost?
Well, yeah.
Like what?
I learned that don't double dribble, don't travel.
Passing?
Yeah, don't pass to the other team.
Yep. You guys were passing a lot of arc passes, which was over your head, instead of actually dribbling and passing to the ground. You guys were passing a lot
I
there.
passed to the ground.
You did?
I actually not ground, but just rolled. That person was guarding me. I just had to roll.
Alright, well, next time we actually have a moment with Claire, you will be back in soccer.
Yep.
Are you looking forward to it?
Uh-huh.
I am too, because I get to go back behind the bench. Alright, well, say goodbye.
Goodbye. And this was a moment with Claire.